Excellent. Let's just wait a few minutes and see what happens. Hello, Elizabeth. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. It's much appreciated. Just going to wait a little bit to see if we get some more people joining us before I start my project tonight. Juliana has joined us. Thank you so much, my darling. It's much appreciated. There we are. It's all cool. Hi, Marjorie. Sheila, welcome, my darling. Thank you for joining us this evening. So the clock has just clicked through to 6 o'clock, and let's just do a little bit of housekeeping. My name is Gill. I am part of Pentacolor creative team and have been for several years now. If you are watching this and there is a red live box at the top left of your screen, then you're watching the live stream as it goes out, and I should be able to see your comments and respond to them. I apologize if I don't see them all. Please don't think that I'm being rude if I don't respond to you. If that red live box is not present, then you are watching on catch up or replay. If you comment a hashtag replay, I will know that you have watched and will come back to say thank you to you. So, Kathleen, thank you for joining us this evening. Sheila, could you please confirm that you can see and hear me okay? I can see on my screen. I can't hear because I have all the sounds switched off so that I don't have a double sound system echoing, which is quite frustrating. Let me just move that way. That takes that image out of the little red red box that's there, and then we can start our mate this evening. Thank you, Sheila, very much appreciated. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us this evening and for liking and sharing the post for me. That is always appreciated. So let's just move some bits around. Got everything sorted out, which is lovely. I have a little wooden box. It comes from Pentart, and I've primed most of it. I am going to do the bottom off camera, but I thought I would share a little trick because I didn't really realise until a while ago. If you find these little labels really annoying and difficult to take off, which I know you can, I have in the past, then hopefully by just taking a heat gun and heating up the glue, it will make it come off more easily for you. You just need to be able to get hold of the edge. And of course, is it going to work today? Is it? There we are. But, hopefully we'll get this off in, you see, it really is going to be a pain in the proverbial, isn't it? But it's always wise. There we are. That bit's heated up. So if you then just heat it up, it's much easier, and you get very few of the pesky little extra bits from tearing it off and then being left to deal with the glue, because the glue lifts with the paper. So that's always cool. Welcome, Blanche. Thank you for joining us from Mexico. That sounds incredibly yummy, Sarah. I have to say that I've had some cereal this evening. So I took my plain wooden bowl. It's a tray on the Pentart site, and I have primed it with acrylic primer because that helps seal it. And I'm just going to grab a sanding block, of which I've got many. because when you add a primer to a wooden surface, quite often you end up with the little fibres lifting off, and so it is worth just taking a sanding block and shifting those little fibres off, because if you don't, then it will definitely, you'll be able to feel them on the finished piece. If you want a bit of texture, it doesn't really matter, but if that's not what you want, then giving it just a little sand will help give you a nicer finish overall to your piece. Obviously, how much you do and how fanatical you are is entirely up to you. But sometimes, if you've ever wondered why your pieces end up feeling almost gritty when you prime them, that's because the loose wood fibre can absorb your stuff. Oh, there we are, and we'll just give that, and that for me now feels much smoother. And it's a good practice to get into. Hi Trudy, welcome, welcome. Cheesy chips with mint sauce on and a piece of chicken. I'm not too sure that I'd go cheesy chips with mint sauce. Cheesy chips, yeah. Mint sauce, maybe not. Sarah, are you tagging people for me, my darling? If so, it's much appreciated. B might still be at work, I think, because poor lady has been very, very busy. Let's just pop that out of the way. So we're going to use two different forms of crackle today, which might prove a little taxing, but hey ho, that is the plan. And I'm going to start by using acrylic paint matte, because it gives a beautiful matte finish, in red wine. It's slightly brighter than Bourdon, but Bourdon would work if you equally well for this piece. And I've chosen it because I want a contrast between the outside and the inside of my piece. And I will going to leave the rim so that hopefully I can keep my hands reasonably clean and whilst we're doing it. Well, that's the intention. Whether that's what happens in practice is, of course, an entirely different matter. But I thought today we'd just explore a couple of different crackles that I've used many times before, but just to remind people of some of the key differences and why you might want to have more than one type in your arsenal to try. So a reasonable amount of paint on your brush. If it starts dragging, add some more, because if you don't, that's when you're much more likely to end up with brush strokes in, and you can add more than one layer if you want to. So let's just pop this into here. There is going to be a bit of rinse and repeat on this process, but that's just fine, because actually that's real life, isn't it, for when we're crafting. And as I say, I'm going to do something else to contrast on the rim. So there we are. So this is, I think Bourdon's probably my favourite colour, but the red wine comes a pretty close second to that, which is cool. So there we are. So that's what we're going to do. Let's just make sure we don't have lots of brush marks. I've got a reasonable amount of paint still on my brush, so that's taking out the excess, and that will help. Good evening, Faith. Welcome, welcome, welcome from beautiful Scotland. How is the weather for you today? I trust that it's reasonable. We've not had a bad day, it has to be said. We've not. It's been reasonably okay, which is always cool, isn't it, I think? There we are. So let's just carry on, and we will just going to have fun, because I just thought it would be nice to do a functional piece today rather than a purely decorative piece. Hello Anna, welcome my darling. So in New York, I went live at 6. It's possibly 2 o'clock in the afternoon for you, my darling, or is it 1 o'clock? Are you 4 hours or 5 hours ahead of me, or behind me even? I think. Are you Eastern time or are you Central time? That's possibly might help. There we are. 1 p.m. So you're 5 hours behind me. That's always cool. There we are. So I can go on to there, and then we've got the outside. But as I say, I'm going to do the undersurface off the live, and I'm doing it this way deliberately to hopefully I can do a couple of different crackle techniques, but also not end up with my hands too filthy dirty. I and ahed about whether I should just do one crackle technique, but the project wouldn't be the same, or wouldn't give the look that I ultimately wanted. So decided that I would stick with my vision for the project and use the two. And they say the joy of having a nice reasonable rim on this, it means that I can hopefully keep my hands clean while I do things, because that would be sort of helpful, I guess. Well, I know. Because, you know, there's going to be some inevitable drying, because that is, oh, she says, putting a hand in the bit that she didn't really want to get a hand in. So there we are, you see, as I pick that up. And of course, you know, left to yourself and not on a live, you could just do one side, you know, do one bit and move on and do the next, couldn't you? You don't necessarily have to, you know, be working on inside and outside simultaneously, just to make, because it just does make your life much harder when you're trying to be clever and do things like that. But hey ho, that's what lives are about. So let me just see whether I managed to catch or take off too much of that paint. I didn't. Okie dokie. So let's just give this a little bit of a blast dry. Yes, I've seen that the remnants of the hurricane were going to hit you tomorrow. It's never good, is it? But it is just part of the live project. So let's just give the bottom of this a try. Yeah, it's dull here. We haven't had rain, but we definitely have had, it's dull. It's not its normal sunny stuff. Fortunately, the conservatory is still nice and bright, which makes life easier. Now, because of what I've got planned, I am very much aware that the solid colour in the bottom is going to be visible, and it's not very even at the moment. And that's often the case when you add a paint over a white primer. You need more than one to get it, particularly by the time it's dry. So let's just add another layer onto here, just so that we've got a nice even coverage, and yeah, it just looks much nicer than having stuff that isn't particularly even, particularly in the base of the project. And it's not going to take us very long. These paints really don't take a ridiculous amount of time to dry, but finishing your projects nicely, I think, is quite important to do that. And it's far better to add a couple of thin layers to a project than to try and do it all in one thick go. On the outside, it doesn't matter, because the red isn't going to be all visible. So that makes life easy. So let's just add this another layer over here. It also means that I know that the wood is going to be thoroughly sealed for when I put tea bags, coffee bags, sugar, etc., little treats for my guests in the tray, so it can go into their bedroom and be safe for them, and nothing's going to come in contact with bare wood. I hope the gardening has gone well, Jill. And has Tom spoken to you today, or have you had a message from Tom? For those of you that aren't aware, Gill Murgatroyd is the mother of my daughter's long-term boyfriend, and he did his part one or his theory component of his driving test today, which my daughter has been nagging him to do for a wee while, and that's also just fine. There we are. So let's just I will need that again, so let me just pop that over there, and grab a baby wipe. Hardly stop. So Tom passed his driving test. Now that Jill's confirmed that she knows, I will share it now as well. So he's passed his theory. For those of you who aren't in the UK, UK driving tests come with a theory test to make sure that you really have understood the laws of the road in the country, and then let's just add some red to this because it's going to look better overall, and I can get this lot dried in a minute. So yeah, so and you have to do that before you are allowed to do your practical driving test. So it's a big step for people, even though insurance for cars over here is now astronomical, particularly for a new driver. There we are. Excellent. Good. I still will need that. So let's just give this a jolly good dry. Is it, Sheila? I think it's a good, it's a good idea that people have a basic understanding, or more than a basic understanding of the rules of the road. Since first aid knowledge is also, I think, a very useful thing for everyone to do. Any excuse every reason for making sure people understand the basic life support resuscitation, I think, is a good idea. And driving tests are a good chance to put that, to reinforce that. Good evening, Connie. Welcome, my darling. So I'm just going to give this a proper dry because, as I say, we're going to add a couple of different cattle mediums to this. One for the inside and one for the outside. And they definitely need to have dry surfaces to go. Honestly, there is no way of short circuiting these steps. And also, I really do think it's important to demonstrate the reality of things, how they go, and and not skip too many steps, because I think it's very easy for people, particularly when they're fast forwarding videos, actually not to pick up where you've short circuited. So I do like to do most of it rather climbing without. So one of the joys of heat drying, of course, is that you surface dry the top and the depth of the paint stay wet. So I can see the paint layers drying, but then when I take the heat gun away, they go shiny again, and that's because there's still water underneath the surface. So you just need to be very much aware of that when you're working with these, and hopefully, so I will be able to pick this up imminently. There we are, and get the outside also dried. And we'll start going through the different crackles. You can see that there's a little bit of white up there, so let's just squabble that into there. So it's less of a problem on here because of what I'm intending doing long term. Sorry, I've just jiggled my camera, so I hope I haven't made anyone feel too terribly seasick doing that. You don't want to keep your heat gun in place for too long, because you will bubble your products, your paints and things, and that's not great. Yeah, but there is no choice on a live but to try and speed things up a little bit. Okay. still see that that's not completely dry. So just go around here and make sure we're reasonably dry. I will be needing that paint again, so bear with while I leave that exposed. In fact, what I'm going to do is just pop a little wipe over that to minimize the risks of it drying out in the pot. Let me put that candle, which is for an entirely different project, out of the way. Cool. So we're going to use two different crackles today. So for the inside, I am going to use Classic Crackle, which is a 2-component crackle. And you don't see me using this very often. And on the outside, I'm going to use the 1-component crackle, which I use fairly frequently. There we are. She says, gloop, gloop, gloop. There we are. So the crackles are water-based materials, and both of these are water-stable crackles. So it doesn't, I'm not going to use a wet brush, but I'm certainly not using a bone dry one that's been dried a few days. So I'm just going to add a layer of the step 1 crackle. And the step 1s are always white to my project. Here we are. On the inside, as I say, we're going to use 2 different crackles, and this gives a very different result to the fine line crackle that I used on my Sunday live. There we are. So let's just make sure we've got a reasonable layer on there. Don't want thick blobs, because thick blobs will show through. But you do need a layer of coverage. You don't need to be completely stingy with it either. So that's always good. Good evening, Loren, and also Lene. It's nice to see you joining us this evening. It's always appreciated. I never quite know when I'm doing live whether people are going to feel it's worth the while for joining me. I always never assume anything. Definitely like it and appreciate it when people do. There we are. So let's just add a layer of that. Let's just make sure we've got it covered. From there. Don't necessarily want it up there, but hey, we'll deal with that. And as both of the crackles need to be dried, we're going to. That's what we'll do. We'll pop both on, and then we can get the other of them dried along the way. There we are. These dry reasonably quickly, and they are heat stable, which also always makes life easy, doesn't it? If you've got a heat stable medium. I won't be able to tip it up so much when I'm doing the outside, but that's okay. Cool. Cool. So that brush can go into there. And let's just wipe that crackle off the top, because I don't want it on there. Okie dokie. So that is step 1 of the 2-component crackle, and we'll now turn our attention to the outside, and we're going to use the 1-component crackle on there. Hello, Sarah. Thank you for joining me this evening. There we are. So let's just add. So this 1-component crackle is a clear liquid. It is much more liquid than the white, and you just need a layer of it onto here. Let's just make sure we don't go over the top. There we are. So we did vaguely planned what we were doing. Or we didn't just vaguely plan it. We know exactly. I've known exactly where I'm intending to go with this piece, to be fair, because that's the joy of having a regular live. It means at a set time, I know I can plan. And talking about set times, you might. Oh dear, that hasn't made that camera foggy. I don't think I caught the camera with the brush. Might have done, but I don't think I did. Is that I'm back at on my normal Tuesday time next week with a project involving lots and lots of little houses. And I will say no more. So that can go down there. That can go in there. And we'll lid that. So I think I can manage. Thank you, Faith. Good evening, Sophie. Oh, she says, I've got sticky little mitts now. There we are. So let's just give this a little wish dry. Because it's going to be much easier. We do have some moulds coming for this piece, but not very many of them. Shock horror, I hear you say. Because again, almost a project for me without some form of crackle or some form of mould would be pretty unheard of, I think. So let's just give this all a little wash dry. And that rim's going to allow me just to squiggle it round reasonably well, I think. So I'm rather hoping by the time the inside is dry, the outside isn't going to be far off like that. We'll move these around because, of course, the heat's going to transfer through. Hi, Sophie. Welcome, my darling. How did you get on with your quilt panels that you were doing? I'm intrigued. I am so not a sewer. So it's what I always admire people who can do quilting and quilt panels. You see, it's beginning to dry. And of course, the heat will transfer through from one side to the other, which will help the drying process. Which is always good. Let's get rid of that clear medium that I've just got on those top corners. Don't want those to crackle. With past experience says I would have to sand off areas and then redo them if I do, because the crackle medium, once it's applied, will crackle through more than one of our things. I'm glad to hear it, Sophie. I'm looking forward to seeing what you're doing with it, what it looks like when it's finished. So we just need to, as I say, get this lot dry. Yeah. So what's everyone got planned? It's bank holiday weekend in the UK coming up. It was, I think, a bank holiday in Hungary yesterday, which is why the live got moved. But we're getting there. We're not dry enough yet, but we are getting there. We are getting there. And the problem with the crackle mediums is that they are shiny when they are dry. So touch is what you need to do, but if you touch them and you're wrong, then you will leave a sticky fingerprint, and that's maybe also not a look that you want. You know, when it goes on white, it's easy because you know when it's dry because it's gone clear. But you know, you can see that it is drying reasonably nicely. And I'm doing it in this way rather than painting my moulds, because I've got set 2 to go on this inside, not in Scotland. I think you have other days of the year when you have holidays, when when England doesn't. So I guess it probably evens up overall. It wouldn't do, why would the government of a so-called United area have everything all conveniently at the same time? Why would you? It's just common sense. That sounds a lovely plan for the weekend, Sarah, crafting. Are you going to be using a new collection at all? Good evening in July and September. So we don't have them on those at all. So our last bank holiday of the year is the August bank holiday, and then we don't technically have anything then until Christmas. So I just need these white stripes to disappear. Oh, very good. I tend to bob in and bob out. I often end up having have conflicted interests with several people of my friends doing lives at the same time, and then I have to juggle between, or accept that I'm not going to watch and have to go back and watch on replay. You just can't, with the numbers of lives, do everything for everyone all of the time. So, we're not quite there on the outside either, but then nor is the inside. So there we are. Let me just lift this. I can still, and then I can give this a bit better, because I can see it's still very wet in some areas. A reasonable, I think. But it seems to have depended on where I've held my heat then, I think. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. That's not. So let's get this one dry. And that's still not dry. So if you look here in the camera, you can see an area that is dry and an area that isn't dry. So you just need to be patient to do this. So equally, if you've got a heat gun to it, don't bubble the medium, because that doesn't give you a very nice effect long term. So let's just come back into here. We're getting there. We've not got. She said, "I've got a bubble there." That's not what we wanted. We said, "Don't bubble it," but it is the joy of a life. Let's just flatten those down. We're going to have a rounding effect on here, so it's not going to be so difficult. And a lot of that is now dry. I just need these last few areas that are white to go clear. Oh, I don't know why that flashed. I do apologise. Let's just come off here and break those down. Let's just let that cool down a little bit. That's still wet. So let's just do that bit. And we might just ignore the white areas in a minute, but I wouldn't suggest that you do that long term. You really should let it all go completely. As it's in the nooks and the crannies, I'm going to be naughty, ladies, and I know I'm intentionally being naughty. So please just make sure you have it properly dry. So we layered the white step 1 in the centre, and I'm now going to add the thinner and therefore quicker drying step 2 to the inside of here. Good evening, Isabel. Welcome. So this is a much more liquid medium. There we are. The white will continue to dry. It might not crackle over there, but it will ultimately. Let's just make sure I have got a layer over everything. And then I can swipe the excess up the sides of the box to make sure that I do have a layer covering everything. It's a thin medium, so it's intentionally not meant to go on as a thick layer. You just need a coating. So let's just pick up the excess that's dribbling. We'll need a bit more, so let's just pop that into there. And you can see that it's slightly milky when it goes on, and that's also fine, because it will dry clear and shiny. So I can see where I've bubbled, but that's my bad, not anything else. And that's purely because I was rushing instead of being ultimately very nicely patient. I don't want an uneven layer particularly. Here. There we are. Let's just move that into here. Don't want thick globs in areas either, because that won't look pretty. Hopefully will work. Let me just give this a little bit of a wash. I'm not going to dry it all completely at this stage. I'll give that a starting helping hand. You see, it's already beginning to dry. Right, so I think it's my heat gun that's setting that off and making it wriggle. So that can now be tipped upside down, because why wouldn't I? And let's just grab that. Because I don't want the red, because I'm going to be adding some decoupage paper onto here. And I'm going to want a nice fine crackle. So you can pop your steplet for the one component crackle on with a brush or with a dauber, and you will get a slightly different effect. So I'm loading my dauber, and I'm being careful to make sure. Oh, sorry, that was me. That definitely was me bashing the camera. But as I say, you definitely will, you get a more vertical lined, bigger space cracks when you use a brush. You get them in the line of the brush, whereas when you use a dauber for your second layer, you get a finer, more lacy effect. So you go with the effect that you want for the piece that you're making at the time. Yeah. You want a coverage. We are going to have a crackled effect. It won't matter if it's not entirely even. There we are. And it's easier to work back over if you have used a dauber rather than a paintbrush. It's easier to spread out your layers. That is for certain. That's got touched. Let's just pick up a bit more from there. But I am definitely not overworking that. So that can go down, and I can now use what's left of that white on here. Well, it's a cream white, so it's a chalky paint, and the Pentart Decor Soft Chalkies crackle beautifully. So I can just now come round here and add a nice layer of paint to the bottom to mimic the top layer. And of course, if I need to, I can always come back and do a second layer of that if I want to. There we are. So I'm not mithered about that being not completely solid at that stage. There we are. But let's just shuffle that out over there. Oops, she says, having touched it. That was not very intelligent. I've just oops and made a mess of the crackle on one of the sides. So let me just tap a little bit of extra paint into there. It won't crackle, but it won't look so horrendous. Let me do that. And then we can go to our mould. So I've taken 3 moulds from the coffee and chocolate collection. So I've got coffee, cocoa and sugar, because clearly the Italians who made these don't do tea, which is very, very inconsiderate, I think. But hey ho, such is life. So these have been cast in amazing casting resin, my preferred white resin at the moment. It probably won't be in a few weeks' time, and that's all I'm allowed to say on that. And then added a coat of bonding primer over those. We're going to pick up the colour on the inside by giving these a coat of that red wine acrylic, matte acrylic paint. There we are. We'll end up with mucky, icky, mucky, sticky fingers, because that's just what will happen. I know my luck. So there we are. Go around the edges of these. I did mention chocolate, Sophie. I did indeed. I know, how very remiss of me, but yeah, I did. I haven't got cakes though, unfortunately, but I did mention chocolate. One of the in fact, it says cocoa. It doesn't say chocolate at all, but near enough, isn't it? Really, it's part of chocolate. So there we are. Let's just pop those into there and give my hands now a good wipe, because otherwise I'm going to end up with red paint where I really don't want it. And I think that's going to, one layer is going to give me a solid enough cover. So let's just pop that onto there. No problem, Betty. Just that I'm always grateful for you for coming in, my darling, and supporting me, and sharing is just cool. There we are. Let's just get the worst of that off there, and then we can have a jolly good dry of everything. The outside of this now needs to be dry before I can do very much on the sides of it. or before I can lift it up to do the inside. Thank you, my darling. And then I can show you how this is crackled. It's crackled beautifully, but I can say that and you can't see a thing because it's wet still and I can't lift it up. We will get there in a minute. I just need to get it more dry than it is, because in areas I was relatively generous with my off-white top coat. Yeah, that's just moving around. Yeah, so we'll be adding a bit more white paint to the bottom of the live, just to have that colour more more even. Don't really want to touch these sides yet, because until this is properly dry, the crackle will lift if you touch it. So you just need to be aware. And I want to add some glue on some areas, so we're going to be lifting it. So we'll just work our way around. Patience is a virtue. I'll move that over there. There we are. So there we are. There is our crackle. I can see where I've still got areas that are wet. Good evening, Asia. There we are. Welcome, welcome. I don't know how well this is crackling on the inside. You wouldn't see it, right? But I can see it. And look what other mess I've made over there. But we'll tackle that mess, because that's not such a headache long term. It works really very well. And this is the effect that you get with applying it with a sponge rather than with a brush. With a brush, you get longer, more irregular crackles, whereas this way you definitely get a more crazed appearance. But it just is. It's a lovely, lovely, lovely effect. Let me just move this around a bit. Let's just give these a little bit of a dry whilst the going is good. The crackle on the inside is looking nice. It's quite a fine crackle, and it's definitely random. And of course, because it's clear on the red, you definitely can't see it. And I so need the rest of this to dry without bubbling. I've got I can see at least one area where I've got bubbling. That'll make a mess, but hey ho, I'll live with that. But from the basis of me doing it on the live, generally you're better off leaving your two component crackles to dry spontaneously rather than doing it any other way. The mess on the top doesn't matter anyway, because I'm going to alter that, so that's not going to be a big headache. And having put my red brush in the pot of water, I can see that these are not entirely even with their colouring. So I'm going to behave and come back to add that, because the whole piece isn't going to take a silly amount of time to come together once it's all dry. Yeah, once everything is dry. But if you're going to do a project, it's nice to have a nice project, isn't it? The one that you can be totally proud of, rather than one that you've speeded and cut, and made a mess of in the process. There we are. Cool. I'll pop that back in there. Get rid of that. So that bit is definitely still not quite ready. Let's just give this another bit of a blast. That's better. Actually, blasting is making a difference. You just need to wait for some of these other areas to dry anyway, so why not? That one's dry, that one's dry, that one's dry. This one is not completely dry. It's getting there. Right, so there is no shortcutting some of this, I'm afraid. Some of the steps I can shortcut, and some of them I can move along a bit, but not all of them. So let's just get these dry, and then we can get rid of the dirty wet, the wet and red paint from everywhere, and then I can tackle some nice paper elements. Yeah. I'll be able to show you how the crackle differs between having a very thin layer and a thick layer with how this has been applied, which is also an extra trick, isn't it, for doing things. Okay, right. Let's just pop that on the floor. With the heat gun pouring at it. There we are. Oh, get rid of all of the dirty stuff, otherwise we'll end up with a mucky, ucky, sticky, ucky, horrible rice papers, which are red when I don't want them to be red. Don't want it to be red. There we are. Stick that over there so it's vaguely wafting in the breeze. That's it. So we're balancing things precariously there. So there we are. That will work. That will work. I can see it's actually crackled very nicely. So I thought, what am I going to do? What are we going to add? So we have this beautiful rice paper from Stamperia, which has got lots of cups. So I thought that would be quite good for a guest room drinks tray. And it is DFSA 4912. You could just as easily put pretty florals on. That would work. Let's just lid that properly before we throw that every which way. And let's just pick out some of these. So I'm just going to pick up a brush and I'm going to squirt some water onto my glass mat because that is going to make life easier. And then let's just see which of the rice papers we want. I think we're going to go, I need 3 because I've got 3 spaces. So I think I'm going to go for that one. Just because I can. That one. And I know that means I'm going to have 2 with and I think possibly that one, because then we haven't got two, two with the each plate will be slightly different. There we are. Good. So that's just some water around those, and I'm just going to split carefully around these. So here I'm holding with this hand the image I want to keep safe, and I'm pushing with the other hand where I want the break to happen. So hopefully this way I don't end up damaging the main image, and I won't also end up causing myself problems for the other images that are on. So I'm going to reverse it here, hold with this and pull gently that away. There we are. So I now have a cup. I suppose I could add some of those little floral elements. I wasn't intending doing so, and I think I'm not going to suddenly change my plans tonight. Let me just, while that's coming off there, change the angle of that so it's at a slightly different area of the bowl. Yeah. Let's just take that little extra piece off there. And let's take this out of here. And of course, that means I'm going to have enough for another project. You could, if you didn't have the mould that I'm going to add onto some of it, just put a different cup onto each of the panels. There's not enough to do each of the panels outside and inside. So just be aware, we'll get 2 pieces of rice paper. The choice is yours. There we are. Okay. They do have a lot of beautiful images. Blanche, you are completely correct. Right, excellent. Good. Right, well, why did you not do that, you daft bat? Well, you think you have everything out, and you clearly didn't. Silky shine. No, I don't want silky shine. I want... Oh, why not? Let's go for the silky shine. Why not? We can add it over everything. You usually see me using matte rather than silky shine, but it doesn't really matter. So this is just a decoupage glue and varnish, and I'm going to pop this over everything, to be fair. It will help stabilise that crackle, and because it's a shiny coatering, it just makes sense to cover everything that you want shiny with it, rather than try not. You wouldn't need to add it over everything if you were using the matte, but actually my tendency is always to do that anyway. There we are. Cool. So let us take one of those cups and we'll just add that over there. The crackle will show through when it's dry, and that is absolutely fine. I have no qualms and no issues and no problems with that. It's just going to add a little bit of extra interest. So there we are. That the alternate panels are ultimately going to have a mould on them. As I say, you could just as easily have... Let's just take that offending piece of rice paper that I definitely don't want to use at the moment off there. There we are. So that is the second one. There we are. I'll just pop that into the centre of there, or centre-ish of there. Pop that one there. I definitely don't want purple sparkle. Yeah, definitely no purple sparkle today. There we are. I think that one's already got. There we are. So let's just pop that one into the centre of there and pop that down. And because I've got a pale background and I've also got the crackle coming through, the edges will ultimately blend in reasonably well. Cool. Let's just get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. We've still got dreaded white in the middle of here, but hey ho, do not fret, we have a plan. So what did I do with my tray of white paint? There we are. So I am going to mix up, to deal with that top, some pigment fix. Hi Joan, welcome my darling. Don't need masses. There we are. Maybe just a tad more. So you always use a pipette to dispense the pigment fix because it's just easier. And this is the gold metallic powder. So let's just stick some of that into there. Because why not? Why not? Why not? And let's just give that a little mix with a smaller brush than that, so we can be reasonably secure. So the pigment fix makes a beautiful rich metallic color. Once you've mixed it, you can't keep it. So I've mixed as per typical, probably way, well, I know I've mixed way more than I need, but that's life. There we are. Should have stuck with the first glob of or amount of the pigment fix that I added, but there we are. And I might need to add 2 layers to this because of having the colour on it. So I'm just now going to be patient and add a gold trim to my box because it's going to make it look nice and rich and hopefully decadent. I'm working onto a dark red background. There is little white might not look so good, and I might end up needing a second layer, but that's also fine. So let's just come round. Smooth that out so we don't have brush marks. There we are. Let's move that back into camera because that might help as well, mightn't it? Always is a good move. Yeah. The reason I've just turned it is that was my son who was cooking tea and he's come to see where I'm up to. But he's aware that I was going to be live this evening and that I might be heating my tea or reheating my tea for myself. There we are. So it just is such a beautiful, 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 rich colour. And you can use it to add splatters. You just thin it down a little bit and it will splatter nicely. And I did and ah about just splattering the inside, but that would have been far too easy, wouldn't it? So at this point, I'm just going to knock most of that off. And we're just going to add some of that gold. I'm happy for it to have a shabby effect because of the crackle. It doesn't need to be all. There we are. So that was the coffee. That is cocoa. Oh, she says. It just helps bring out the details. There we are, cocoa. I first started getting my adult son to cook teas, we had a few horrors, Joan, but actually he enjoys cooking and he's now very good at it, and it's lovely. And I just think it's important, if you're an adult in your parents' home, that you contribute to the activities of the household, and that's there. I think I might just add a little bit more onto that one. Let me just have a wee look at this one. Just see if we can add just a little bit more. Cool. So let's now how does it feel dry? The white areas are touch dry, ladies, okay? They will continue to dry. And if I wait for those to be fully dry, you might just be here a wee while. So I'm now going to use that same pigment. Oh, she says, putting a hand in a wet paint it wasn't quite the intended activity. But I've got enough paint that I can go back over that. So the white will continue to dry, so don't worry about that. And we're just going to pop the pigment into all of the crackles. So I'm using the pigment instead of an antique paste, and I can varnish it. So this blob here is where it wasn't wet, where it was still wet. That's my bad for rushing. But, it's a handmade piece. I'll live with that. And it looks like I'm going to have some other areas that are similar, so I'll not be too worried about it. There we are. As I say, definitely, my strong advice is that you wait and let everything dry properly before you do things like this. Let me just, because it's still wet on the outside. I know it's still wet on the outside. Let me just take a heat gun and give this a wee blitz. And we'll leave that before I'm just drying the outside and the gold pigment. I'm going to put some more gold pigment on top of some of this where I touched it and it wasn't properly dry. And I don't want to knock out the contents of this and end up with it in the wet glue on the outside. Well, that's fine. So I can now take, because this is a water stable crackle medium, I can now, unlike the fine line, but it does give you a different effect. She said, and now I've taken off a lump of the cream paint over there. We'll tackle that bit in a minute. There we are. Right. What comes from rushing. So I will lift this up to the camera in a minute when I've taken off all of the loose. There we are. So if I lift that up, we've got lots of crackles. It's very random. Very random. It's difficult to see, I think, but it is a very thin crackle and very random. So let's just tackle the mess on the top, and then we will correct the bits that we need to correct. we've got the classic crackle in there. So let's just give these all a jolly good blast. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, because it's just, again, it's going to make my life easier. Let's find a smaller dog than that. Have I got a smaller dog with a hand? Yay, I have. Okay. So let's just take this and we can just add a layer of that. Remember, I'm going to pop my pieces, my resin pieces, onto these. There we are. And the dauber means I'm going to get a little bit of variation, and that's also fine. There we are. They're just adding a frame to these pieces. And I'm linking all of the colours into all of the surfaces by doing this. There we are. So it's looking, you can see the crackle, you can see the texture. It will have all been nice and neatly framed. Let's just add a little bit more onto there. Okay. So patience is a virtue. So that now does need a blitz. We'll get this one on this side dry. So we've got these on all three, on 1, 2, 3, and 3 gaps. That needs to dry properly before I can add in and see where the crackles are in some of the areas where the light's not shining at it. As I say, it's definitely a crackle medium best to left to dry on of its own accord naturally. Let me just get this dry, or at least that dry, and then I can show you. So I am, and I will do it off camera, ladies, because I'm going to need to leave each of these to dry on their own. Is I'm going to pop one of these pieces with some heavy body gel, which we did have out. We know. Ooh, yeah. Is that dry? That's the dry one. Okay. We know we had heavy body gel out. We've got bonding primer, we've got acrylic primer, we've got silky shine. Well, there we are. You know, it be live. I know there's another heavy body gel out because this isn't the one I've been using. So let's just take a little bit of this. I could add a blob of hot glue, I guess. To speed up the dry, but I'm going to pop that central into there. We'll give that a little bit of a squish. That's going to go onto there. I don't know that I'm going to get all 3 of them on tonight, because it might be just asking for a bit of trouble if I try doing all 3 without waiting for them to dry properly. That one can go into there. Okay. So the box will have 1. Let's just move that over ever so slightly. 2. another, the coffee, the cup, and how shall I be a devil? Why shouldn't I be a complete devil? And sugar into there. So off camera, I will paint the bottom when it's dry. I might actually do that in the gold. I will seal the inside of the box. Okay. But we now have a little tray that I can put my tea, coffees and sugars into. And I'm just going to pop that there so it can dry. There we are. Hopefully that, yeah, so they're reasonably stuck, I think. Yeah, let's just get rid of that. Okie dokie. So that is the plan. That is our project. I'm going to leave that up like that and say good night to you ladies, and trust that you will all join me for my live next next Tuesday. So or possibly Sunday on my own page. So bye bye for now. Take care and remember to look after each other.